Hey, quick heads up before we get rolling. If you're building something big and need a boost, papernapkinwisdom.com has a stack of free tools ready for you. Strategy, mindset, leadership, all there, totally free. You can even hit the link in bio on social media and let's level up.
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govind Jayaraman.
Hi, I'm Govind Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 296. As we move closer and closer to celebrating our 300th episode, we're opening the archives and sharing some conversations that never made it out into the world until now. This one was recorded back in 2017, but the wisdom inside it, timeless. My guest today, Jimmy Park, has built a reputation as a connector, a thinker, and someone who sees lessons where other people see problems. What he shared with me is funny, raw, and incredibly real. Once you hear it, you'll never look at challenges the same way again. Think about this. When things don't go the way you planned, how do you react? Do you let it throw you off course? Or do you find a way to keep your energy steady? Jimmy's insight is about those moments, the ones that frustrate us, surprise us, or even make us laugh when we least expect it. So, what if you could shift your perspective in a way that allows you to stay positive, even when the world hands you something less than ideal? That's what Jimmy's napkin is all about. Let's dive in. Jimmy Park, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you on the show with me today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So, Jimmy, you shared a very different paper napkin with me. I'd love it if you could just read it out loud to everyone listening, and then we'll get into why you shared it with me.
Yes, my paper napkin says, "Stay happy when you step in dog shit."
Okay, so why did you choose that to describe with me today?
Well, I sort of like these pearls of wisdom that apply to business, applies to life, small and big, and really goes something like this in terms of the meaning, which is, one day you're going to step in dog shit. Things happen in life and you can't control everything, and sometimes that's going to happen. And you can either be happy or you can be angry that you stepped in dog shit. But either way, you've got dog shit on your foot. And it sort of wraps up a couple of concepts that are out there in positivity, problem solving, and really the making the best of even a bad situation when they do come by.
One of the things I think is really sort of part of what you just said, and I liked a lot, was this notion that it's going to happen, right? I mean, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers sort of believe that they can plan themselves away from that. And you're saying that's just not possible.
A lot of times I talk to other entrepreneurs and business leaders, or even mentor some people who are about to take the jump into entrepreneurship or self-business, leaving a corporate job. And I sort of explain entrepreneurship sort of like having a child. I have a 12-year-old, I have a 10-year-old. And I just remember the first 4 years of it was, it's exactly what they say. It's the best thing that ever happened to you, but the most work you've ever done in your life. As much as being a parent is a great thing, there are those days in which some things happen or things that you have to deal with that aren't the greatest thing in the whole world to happen, but it's just a part of life. And I think entrepreneurship is very much like that. It's the most work that you've ever taken on. It's probably the best thing that ever happened to you. And also, it really takes, from what I've found, it really takes about 4 years to get a new business to be sort of stable. And after a child turns 4 years old, they can start to dress themselves, or certainly out of diapers. They can have conversations, have their own personality. Well, stabilize a little bit. I always say with my wife, if I could pop out kids at 4 years old, we'd probably have 5 of them instead of 2. But entrepreneurship is the same thing, and there are going to be days that unexpected things happen, and you just have to deal with them with the best attitude.
Yeah, I love that. And then there's a lot there. There's the 4-year thing that I want to talk about, but the is so how what is the thing that you felt from your experience that you need to do to prep yourself to get yourself into the attitude that when stuff happens that you're in the right zone?
Exactly. I think that there's a couple of things that puts an entrepreneur or a person in the right zone when these things happen. I like to think it's 50% nature and 50% nurture. A part of me thinks that a lot of entrepreneurs find themselves as entrepreneurs because they are natural problem solvers. They are naturally positive in terms of how they deal with problems. But I think one thing that I try to do is to feel myself having a sort of larger or an internal locus of control, meaning I feel that I tell myself that when situations do occur, that I am in control to solve the problem, and every problem is solvable. And if it's something that you can't control, it's not something that you need to worry about too much anyway. But I think being able to have that positive standpoint every day that you go into work, also again, being a natural problem solver, that things are going to happen and you need to find a solution. Entrepreneurship and being a business leader is similar to I believe a couple of other professions out there. For example, being a physician or being a software engineer, in which and I compare those it's sort of weird comparison, but each of those occupations, you are the last line of defense. A physician, that they don't really have someone to go ask for an answer. A software developer has to figure out that piece of code to fix it, and an entrepreneur is a person that's sort of the last line of defense, in which there isn't usually someone to go ask a question for, and you just have to make the decision. So all of these aspects, I think, are things that you can nurture and train yourself, but also it might be good to have a little bit of that innate in your personality.
So can you give me an example? I mean, you've sort of talked about the concept, but let's get really contextual. What's an example of how that plays out? Give me an example of what that looks like.
Well, in everyday life, do you want me to stick to business, or everyday life is fine as well?
Yeah. Why don't you give me a business context?
Okay. And a business context is I led the project for the digital media implementation of a fundraising event called the 12-12-12 Concert for Sandy. And it was after Hurricane Sandy hit, and there was a large fundraising event that occurred. And right in the middle of all of the donations, after the second set of music, we found out that there was difficulty in one of the credit processors, and it was hard for it to really handle all the transactions. There was about 8,000 transactions for $8,000 worth of transactions per second that was going on, and we had to deal with that situation. And when that was occurring, it could be a sort of a panic situation that millions of people are calling in to donate, and it's the one time that you have to hit that. And when all of this was going on, I had to stop, get an assessment of what was going on, couldn't panic from the situation, and had to find a solution within minutes. And that solution did come about, and we actually had some people in the crowd that was able to help us. Quick thinking, and we got it back up in a few minutes, and really saved a lot of donations that night. So, in one case, it could have been sort of a poor me, or what do I do, or even adding more energy into the situation by yelling or being stressful. I find that removing stress, and I try to get more quiet and more calm the more the dire the situation is. And I have found that has been helpful, but that certainly is one situation in which being in a hectic situation and staying calm and not moving towards a negative or pessimistic or irate manner certainly helps the situation. And it gives you a clear mind to be able to solve the problem a little bit easier. Finally, it also allows others who are around you, working for you, working with you, to have confidence, to be sort of calm during the storm. I believe that exudes confidence that people also, it's contagious. They become calm, and once if they see that the person who's in charge is calm as well.
I like what you said about it being contagious energy, right? Like it's that really staying calm and being positive and solution oriented is contagious, as is being negative, right? I mean, coming into it with a lot of anxiety and stress and screaming and shouting and hollering would have that same effect, wouldn't it?
Exactly. And what's funny is during these situations, it's sometimes the best things happen, and it's not the times when everything goes smoothly that everything happens well, and then sometimes when things don't go the way as planned, it's something positive can happen out of it. I'm not a believer that everything happens for a reason. But I am a believer that out of almost anything, something good can come out of it. And it could be just as simple as something as, for example, I cook a lot at home. I do most of the cooking at home. My wife will sometimes go to the grocery store and she'll pick up the ingredient list of food. Sometimes she'll come back with an item that's different than what was on the list, or something that is quote unquote incorrect. And back in the day, sometimes you would sort of be a little frustrated about that, and then we laugh about it now. But actually now, sometimes when a wrong ingredient comes, you make the best of it, and then you find out that that's a better way to cook the meal. And that's a small metaphor that happens, but a lot of times out of these stressful situations or things that don't go as planned, some of the best things occur out of it.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I mean, and you said it kind of funnily, right? You said during these situations, good things can happen. I think it's interesting when we're thinking about scraping the shit off our shoe, right? Then we were stepping, but at the same time, it's true, right? I mean, absolutely, the good things can come from that. And if we come at it with a great attitude, we have the ability to harvest that opportunity, right? I mean, we're not missing it.
Exactly. And those, not only do good things come out of it, but some of the best lessons come out of errors, tough times, decisions that didn't go your way. Those are some of the most memorable aspects. I actually train in a sport called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And there's a saying in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is that you never lose in Jiu-Jitsu. You either win or you learn. And it's very true. Anytime that you lose from a particular submission in a tournament or you didn't do as well, those are the times in which you really learn something. And I find that the same in business as well.
I really love that. I had no idea about that motto in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think it's profound. I mean, you either win or you learn. And it's a philosophy I have, but really well stated. So let's apply that. Let's apply that again. Well, actually, before we apply it, let's think back to a time, maybe earlier in your leadership career when you weren't applying that. How did you show up? Like, I mean, this is something you have to practice, right? It doesn't come out of the blue.
Well, I think I have a time in which it wasn't necessarily me and that I learned from the mistake, but it was a decision I made early in my career in which I was working on a project in a public company. And it was mixing two different industries of two different divisions of the company. And I was in one division, another senior manager was in another. And then we had some cost allocations that had to be dealt with at the end of the project. Who takes this cost? Who takes this cost? And I had a proposal and sent something in and received a call from the other industry leader, quite irate about me asking them to take the cost of a particular set of fees. And so we went through and had a disagreement. And I remember the senior manager got a little irate, said some words, hung up the phone on me. And at that point in time, I was about to react. And, that's one of those days that you stepped in dog shit. And I could either be happy about that situation or mad about that situation. And although my knee-jerk reaction being earlier in the career was something that I was angry about at that time, I stopped myself and said, I'm not going to reply to this, and I'm not going to reply to the email until I feel a little bit more calm and in a better state of mind. And I refrained from doing that. And actually what happened is in one day later, the person came to me, apologized, and we had a very good working relationship afterwards. But it certainly was a time to not only state and be in a good place when something happens or take something in the best way, but making sure that even if you're not in that situation at that point in time, it's sometimes better to delay a response and just wait until you are in a good frame of mind to be able to react.
I mean, there's a beauty in that, right? Because I think in today's text and instant message and email world, people are like really feeling like they got to plug in all the time. These smartphones are promoting instant response, and you're right. I mean, when these massively challenging situations occur, when we step in it, a pause is a really great way just to step away from it, right, for a second, and just take that
Mm-hmm.
time until we get back into that positive mindset to take advantage of the opportunity in front of us.
Exactly. And things happen, and it's hard to control emotions sometimes. It's hard just to it's easy to say have a great attitude, be in a positive mood, and take everything for the best. But in actuality, especially in the startup world, when there have been times in the past where it's very traumatic to wonder where payroll's coming from. Will this idea sell? Where can I get this answer from? And it's sometimes it's hard to react in a way or to be able to control emotions, but sometimes time is your best friend in those areas. It has certainly been for me that sometimes taking a step back, thinking about the situation, sleeping on it for a night or two is a good way to get into the best frame of mind, to be productive and objective about a situation.
So what do you do? What do you do in that moment? Let's say somebody texts you, and there's an expectation that somebody's going to get back to somebody relatively quickly, right? I mean, not necessarily immediately. And I for one have a no screens between conversations rule, so I can be away from my phone for hours at a time when I'm with people. But
Mm-hmm.
but notwithstanding that, people have an idea that they're going to get a response in the same day, let's say, when people send each other a text. If you're not ready to respond, what do you do? How do you put that pause in place, those more immediate forms of communication, which even could be, God forbid, conversational as opposed to on text or via technology?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one of the tools that I use, and if something that I have that's timely in a response, but I may not be in an area or a frame of mind that I feel that I want to respond or would be most productive to respond, is I do respond, but I respond with an acknowledgement. I respond letting them know that I received their email and that I will respond. I believe sometimes that it's really the uncertainty of a response or the timing of the response than it is waiting for the actual answer. So I found some positive response in just the fact to send them back an email, let them know you're thinking about it, and that you will respond at a certain point of time. Another tool that I've used just to be able to understand and see the distance, the difference of the two frame of mind responses is sometimes I will write the response immediately. I'll wait and then reread it a day later. And it's different than just waiting, because going back and reading your own words, my own words, a day later, when I've had a time to sleep on it, I can see how clear and how obvious some of the emotional, subjective portions of my response was when I was in that frame of mind versus what I am today. And so I think that being able to see the difference in my own words is something that sort of helped me realize, like, yes, this is a good technique.
Yeah, I think that's really simple and elegant. You said something a little bit earlier on that I want to go back to. And you talked about 4 years, the 4 years sort of, you had this sort of feeling that it took about 4 years for an organization to mature and be maybe a little self-reliant, I think was the word you used. What do you mean by that?
Hmm.
Like, why do you think it takes 4 years?
Well, in my experience, starting a business usually starts out with some sort of problem sort technique. I think a lot of people, they can have different ways they come into entrepreneurship. When I give that 4 year metaphor, this is in the situation in which the company is starting from scratch. It's not purchasing an organization. It's not changing or acquisition or any way like that. But when starting a company from scratch, what I have found is that the first year is sort of like having a kid. It's you don't really know what's going on. The personality, the culture of the company is just forming. You're really just trying to. I remember when having a child, and the first you bring home the baby and you put it in the crib, and the first week, all I was worried about is making sure that my daughter was alive, feeding right, breathing when they were sleeping, didn't get stuck in the crib. All these very basic ideas of survival. After that, you sort of get the hang of it, and then you can move to the next step in terms of teaching, in terms of growth and development. And when the child starts to progress, then it starts to get some of the personality and the culture. And then you're starting to get a lay of the land. Oh, this is how you do the parenting. You start finding communities and groups. And same with entrepreneurship. Sometimes it's in a new industry, and just learning what the community is and the industry is half the battle, half the learning. And so the first 6 months, you're just trying to keep it alive. You're trying to make payroll. Are you hiring the right people? Is the business plan what we want to do? And you're always changing and pivoting and moving. But you're just learning so much that you barely have 2 months ahead of you in sight. But the more you start to learn it over the next couple of years, and again, developing a culture, developing a personality, developing a story and an identity, it's very similar as a child being developing and being a parent at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's a great metaphor. Really great metaphor. So let's just break this down again.
Mm-hmm.
Give people the steps to follow, like that. The moment that you realize that you've stepped in shit, what are the things that you do intentionally? How does that play out? Like, give them a step by step.
Yes. Well, let me walk through sort of my steps of going through this. And by the way, this has sort of changed as I've gotten a little bit older, and I'm 44 years old now. It's a little bit easier for me to do this. But I think when the first thing something happens that seems like a big deal, I sort of take a step back and say, in the grand scheme of this, it's really not that big of a deal. In 20 years and 40 years, is this decision today going to make that big of a difference? And I think as an entrepreneur, sometimes we get locked into that work is the most important thing. That aspect or that thing that happened this week is the most important thing. But in the grand scheme of things, with health and life and time and age, nothing's really that big of a deal. The second thing I take a look at is objectively, is this a problem to solve? And one thing that I talk to some of my employees, and a good lesson that I sort of give to myself is, you have a problem, there are options, and starting off with understanding what those options are, and then finally going with or recommending a final solution. I think to step back, one, give pause, put it in a frame of reference. Secondly, get your mind in a place in which that you can handle this problem or handle this issue in an objective manner. Let the emotions die off, And then 3, go into problem-solving mode, which is understanding your options, understanding which way seems like it is different aspects or truly viable solutions, and then finally making the decision on what that solution is.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. Fantastic. I really enjoyed our conversation, and our time is up already. But I would love to have you back, Jimmy, some other time on Paper Napkin Wisdom. What do you think?
Thank you very much. I enjoyed our conversation today, and thank you for listening, and I hope it helps people out.
Great. Make it a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
What a conversation with Jimmy Park. His napkin may have made you laugh at first, but the wisdom runs deep. Here are the key takeaways from the episode. Problems are inevitable. You can't plan your way out of every mess. Your reaction is your power. You choose whether to get stuck in frustration or move forward. Humor disarms negativity. Laughter helps you and your team keep perspective. Happiness is a choice, not a condition. Staying happy gives you agility and resilience. Acceptance creates momentum. When you let go of why me, then you can get back to building. Jimmy reminded us that leadership isn't about avoiding the dogshit moments. It's about how you carry yourself forward when they happen. If this episode made you think, please subscribe, leave a review, and share Paper Napkin with someone who needs it. And here's my challenge to you. Grab a napkin and write down how you stay positive when life gets messy. And post it with the hashtag Paper Napkin Wisdom. Because it's not about whether challenges come your way, because they will. It's about how you respond, how you lead, and how you turn even the most unexpected moments into wisdom worth sharing. Until next time, remember, small ideas shared with the right intent can lead to big results. Make it a great day.